Hello, this lesson is about simple interest and applications of that. It is 8.3. We don't have a lesson for 8.1 and 8.2. So let's get started. First of all, simple interest can be calculated from a basic formula there. You will need that. It's I equals PRT. Even though it doesn't say it, T right here, that should be in years. Now, your rate is going, it does say this underneath, it's expressed as a decimal when you're actually doing the calculations. So it starts off maybe being a percent, but you do need that to be a decimal, which means you're going to move that decimal 2 spots to the left, you know. So if it said 6%, you would use 0.06. And then I is your interest. Now, P is your starting amount. It does say principal. That is what it stands for, but it's the amount that you start, like you take out a loan for that amount, or maybe you get to loan somebody that amount, but that is that starting amount, the borrowing amount, or the loan amount. And of course, interest, we use that for some other things also, but particularly as we go through this course, this chapter is about some family finance applications. Now, I do have a note down here that I is only the interest, so you would have to add it back to your principal if you wanted to find out the full value of the loan, and we will do that in a couple of slides. But first of all, what's the interest? So again, our formula is going to be I equals PRT. And they are giving us very clearly on this one what those amounts are. So my interest will be $24,000 times, and I'm going to put maybe parentheses. It's hard to see the decimals up there. Now, to get this ready to put in my formula, I need to move that decimal 2 points to the left. That's what I was saying before. So even though it does have a decimal in it, because it still has that percentage until you move that decimal over, you're not right. So that's for this particular formula. So that's going to be 0.85. And then T is 6 years, so it is in years, so we're in good shape to just use the 6. So you can get your calculator and we can just punch those things in, and we're going to have 24,000. And then you can hit times, or you can just do parentheses like I've got it here, 0.085, close parentheses, and then I'm going to open again with the 6. Again, if you put the times, that's fine. It does the same thing, and we're going to hit enter. And if it came out to long decimals, since we're dealing with money, your instructions would tell you to round to the nearest penny if necessary. Probably it could say to the nearest dollar, but this one didn't have any decimals, so it's 12,240. So our next one then, interest, is going to be from PRT, so that's 9,000. Times, move that decimal 2 spots over, so that's 0.065. And then, look, this T is in months. That's a problem. So 8 months is the same thing as 8 out of 12, which then I could reduce. It doesn't matter if you don't reduce it in this case, though, but that's 2/3 of a year. And you do need years in your formula. So down here, I'm going to have to put 2/3. I have 9,000 times, and this time I'm using times because it doesn't matter. You can do it either way. 0.065 times, and now I can use my fraction key. If you don't have a fraction key, you can do parentheses and do 2 divided by 3. I'll show you that. But I'm going to hit alpha y equals enter, because if you've got a graphing calculator, we want you to know how to use it as well as possible. So that's going to be 2, and then go down and 3. I'll go to the right to get behind that fraction, and then I can hit enter. And again, if I had done 9,000 times 0.065 times, and then I could have put 2 divided by 3. With parentheses around it, and I get the exact same thing. So if you need to, you can just enter your fractions like that. But that's 390 then. But let's look at future value. Future value is not how much you borrow today, but what's it worth to the bank when you give it back to them. Okay, that's one way of thinking about it, because they don't just get the amount they loaned you back, they also get the interest back. So this is the formula for future value. But I just have a little note here. Watch what happens though if we distribute P. So if we take the P here and we distribute it to both of them, A will equal P plus PRT. But from our previous work, we've just said that the P times R times T is the interest. So the future value actually is simply saying, take that interest that you've earned from simple interest or that you owe from simple interest, and then add your original amount back to it, okay? And that's going to be your future value. Future value is the A in that formula. And I think that's part of it, just learning the language. What is it they want you to do when they ask a question? So here, find the future value of these loans. Now I've got a little snapshot up there for that same thing. So we're going to fill in everything we can fill in. So A, our future value, is equal to 3,000 parentheses 1 plus, and then we've got the rate. Don't forget, this is still true that that rate needs to be a decimal, so you've got to move that decimal over 2 places to the left, and then times, I'm going to put an asterisk there. I don't want it to look like a decimal, but that's times 2, and that is in years. So now we'll pull up our calculator, and 3,000 times 1 plus 0.07 times 2. Got my formula in there, and I get $3,420. So in other words, you borrowed $3,000, and you're going to have to pay back $3,420. So that's why the bank's willing to loan you money, because they're making money off of it. It does take time. If they loan it to you today, then their future value would be the $3,420. All right, let's do it one more time. So A is equal to the principal times, with parentheses, 1 plus 0.06 times, put my asterisk there so it doesn't look like a decimal, 3. Do make sure that that 3 is in years. I mean, you've always got to make sure that those numbers come up in years so that you can do that. 2,000 parentheses 1 plus 0.06 times 3. So I've got it all entered correctly. $2,360 is our future value. You can see over here on the left, there's only one slide left. How come this lesson's so short? Because this is really just going to come at you in every different direction. So they're not necessarily going to ask you to solve for this future value or the interest. They may ask you to solve for something else within that formula. You just have to read and figure out which one of the formulas you're dealing with, simple interest or future value, and then solve for what's left. We've got 2 problems here. You borrow $1,400 from a friend. Okay, that's your initial borrowing amount. So that amount is your principal. You promised to pay back $2,000 in 2 years. Well, $2,000 then is your future value. 2 years is your time. What simple interest rate? Okay, that's our question. Are you going to pay? So since this one has an A in it, it has to be that future value example. So A equals P parentheses 1 plus RT. So I'm going to fill this in, and I've got 2,000 is equal to 1,400, 1 plus, my interest rate I don't know, but my time is 2. Okay, So you could divide both sides by 1400 first. I don't find that most students do that. Usually what most people do is distribute. So I am going to distribute, but if you divided first, that would be fine. But when I distribute here, 1,400 times 1 plus, and then even though this 2 is written behind it, it's really 1,400 times 2, which is 2,800. And then R, which I'm going to solve for. If I subtract 1,400 from both here and that left-hand side of the equation, I'll get 600 is equal 2,800 R. So now I need to divide by 2,800. And now it's time to pick up that calculator. 600 divided by 2,800, which is the same thing you could reduce first, but 600 divided by 2,800. And I get this decimal, but notice it says to the nearest 10th of a percent. Now right now, I'm going to write down several of those decimal places, so 0.2142. So R is 0.2142, and those numbers kept going. But when we're going to give it as a percent, in this case, I need to move the decimal 2 places to the right and then round it off to the nearest 10th. So that's going to be that R is 21.4%. 21.4%. A bank offers a CD that pays a simple interest rate of 5.5%. So we have our simple interest rate of 5.5%. How much do you have to put in the CD now in order to have $8,000 for a kitchen remodeling project in 2 years? Okay, so that tells me that the $8,000 is a future value. So that's my A. 2 years is my time. Okay. How much do you put in now? That's actually the question. So that's the principal. But I do have my R. So again, I'm going to write all this out. This time I'm just going to go straight to my formula since I already have it written. I'm using the same formula that I had right up here. When we do this one, we know that we have 8,000 for our future value. And the future value equals your current principal, which we don't know, times 1 plus, now the number of years times your rate. Well, my rate is a decimal. I've got to move that decimal over, 0.055, and then times 2 years. So first of all, I can take this part that I have in parentheses and I can simplify that. 2 times 0.05 is 0.1. And then when I add a 1 to it, that part becomes 1.1. I still have a P over here and I still have 8,000. And again, it would have been fine to just bring that up on a calculator and say, okay, I need to do 1 plus 0.05 times 2. I get 1.1. But now looking at our problem, the next step I need to do is divide by 1.1. So it'll be 8,000 divided by 1.1. The order makes a difference. It's a very common mistake for students to take their previous answer and divide, but order makes a difference. It's 8,000 divided by 1.1. Okay, and so you see all those 7 2s just keep repeating, 7,272.72, 72, and then that just rounded. But to the nearest penny, if I'm going to take it to the nearest penny, I'm going to need 73 cents. So I'm going to remember that when I go back over here, and I'm going to say, okay, I did 8,000 divided by 1.1, and that's going to give me P, and P came out to the nearest penny, to 7,272 $272.73. And so that's an application. So we have solved for R and we have solved for P. You could possibly solve for T in time. So you can solve that any which way, but you have two key formulas. So one last look at the two of those formulas. Whenever you are doing simple interest, the two formulas that you have, if you are doing just interest, I equals PRT. And if you are doing future value, then the full amount will equal the principal times 1 plus RT. Okay, so those are the two formulas that you need to do that. And I hope your homework goes well and it doesn't take you too long.